Hi folks, in today's episode we are going to discuss everything about the internet, what it is, how it works, and of course the types of internet. Well, starting with what exactly is the internet. The internet is a worldwide computer network that transmits a variety of data and media across interconnected devices. As you can see on the screen folks, a nice infographic by HP. It works by using a packet routing network that follows Internet Protocol, the IP, and Transport Control Protocol, the TCP. Data sent over the internet is called a message. Before messages get sent, they are broken up into tiny parts called packets. Well, some of you might not be aware of packets, but people like me who have used dial-up internet in the past are very well aware of what packets means. Let's talk about IP. Rules that govern how information is sent from one computer to another over an internet connection is called Internet Protocol. Specifies that computers should send data to other computers with an attached numeric address, the IP address. Like for Airtel, the IP address is 192.168.1.1. You can have a public IP address also if you're using a public Wi-Fi, and you can have a private IP address also if you have a private internet connection assigned to a device on a closed network such as home or business network that's not accessible over the internet. Let's talk about TCP. Works with IP to ensure transfer of data is dependable as well as reliable. TCP is a better protocol than IP because no packets are lost, no delay affecting data quality, packets organized in a proper sequence. Well, let's discuss what happens when you surf the internet. Your device is connected to the web through a modem or a router, which allows it to connect to other networks around the globe. A router allows for multiple computers to join the same network, while a modem connects to your internet service provider, which provides cable or DSL internet. Your personal PC is called a client as opposed to a server. Client computers connect to the internet through the Internet Service Provider, ISP. Servers are computers directly connected to the internet. For example, computers that store web pages, sites, applications. Google has a lot of servers across the globe. Well, the next step is you type in a web address known as a URL. URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator in your browser. Your query is processed and pushed to the ISP, the Internet Service Provider. Your ISP has multiple servers which store and send data, like the NAP server, which stands for Network Access Protection, and a DNS server, which is quite common. DNS stands for Domain Name Server. Your browser looks up the IP address for the domain name you typed into your browser through DNS. DNS translates the text-based domain name you type into the browser into number-based IP address. For example, google.com becomes 64.233.191.255. Well, the next step is your browser sends a hypertext transfer protocol HTTP request to the target server to send a copy of the web page to the client. Client means your computer or your mobile, using TCP IP. Now, all of you all must be aware of these terms, HTTP and HTTPS. HTTP is the language used for internet communication, whereas HTTPS is a secured version of HTTP, and all communication between your browser and website is encrypted. The next step, folks, is that the server approves request and sends a 2000K message to the client computer. Then the server sends web page files to browser in the form of data packets. The next step, folks, is that the website loads as your browser reassembles the packets. The last step, well, you can browse your favorite website. All this happens in a matter of seconds. Now, since we know how the internet functions, let's discuss the types of internet. Number one being mobile internet. Number two being fixed line internet, which is categorized into two, which is the fixed line wired internet as well as fixed point based wireless internet. Apart from that, we have satellite internet, and finally we have the airplane internet. What exactly powers the internet? Is it wireless? Is it wired? As you can see in the infographic, folks, this is showing you how different continents are connected through subsea, undersea cables. Well, one thing is quite clear, folks, that internet is powered by fiber optic cable. Nothing is wireless. But then how exactly does the internet work, and how does it travel across oceans? The internet consists of tiny bits of code that move around the world, traveling along wires as thin as a strand of hair strung across the ocean floor. The data zips from New York to Sydney, from Hong Kong to London in the time it takes you to read this word. Well, this is how thin a fiber optic cable is. Nearly 750,000 miles of cable already connects the continents to support our insatiable demand for communication and entertainment. Companies have typically pooled their resources to collaborate on undersea cable projects, like a freeway for them all to share. But now Google is going its own way in a first-of-a-kind project connecting the US to Chile, home to the company's largest data center in Latin America. People think that the data is in the cloud, but it's not. It's in the ocean. Getting it there is an exacting and time-intensive process. A 456-foot ship named Durable will eventually deliver the cable to sea. But first, the cable is assembled inside a sprawling factory a few hundred yards away in Newington, New Hampshire. The factory, owned by the company Subcom, is filled with specialized machinery used to maintain tension in the wire and encase it in a protective skin. The cables begin as a cluster of strands of tiny threads of glass fibers. Lasers propel data down the threads at nearly the speed of light using fiber optic technology. After reaching land and connecting with an existing network, the data needed to read an email or open a web page makes its way onto a person's device. While most of us now largely experience the internet through Wi-Fi and phone data plans, these systems eventually link up with physical cables that swiftly carry the information across continents or across oceans. In the manufacturing process, the cables move through high-speed mills the size of jet engines, wrapping the wire in a copper casing that carries electricity across the line to keep the data moving. Depending on where the cable will be located, plastic, steel or tar are added later to help it withstand unpredictable ocean environments. When finished, the cables will end up the size of a thick garden hose. A year of planning goes into charting a cable route that avoids underwater hazards, but the cables still have to withstand heavy currents, rock slides, earthquakes, and interference from fishing trawlers. Each cable is expected to last up to 25 years. A conveyor that staff members call the cable highway moves the cable directly into Durable, docked in the Piscatawk River. The ship will carry over 4,000 miles of cable weighing about 3,500 metric tons when fully loaded. Inside the ship, workers spool the cable into cavernous tanks. One person walks the cable swiftly in a circle as if laying out a massive garden hose, while others lie down to hold it in place to ensure that it doesn't snag or not. Even with teams working around the clock, it takes about 4 weeks before the ship is loaded up with enough cable to hit the ocean. The first transatlantic cable was completed in 1858 to connect the US and Britain. Queen Victoria commemorated the occasion with a message to President James Buchanan that took 16 hours to transmit. While new wireless and satellite technologies have been invented in decades since, cables remain the fastest, most efficient and least expensive way to send information across the ocean, and it's still far from cheap. Google would not disclose the cost of its project to Chile, but experts say subsea projects cost up to $350 million, depending on the length of the cable. In the modern era, telecommunication companies laid most of its cables, but over the past decade, American tech giants started taking more control. Google has backed at least 14 cables globally, Amazon, Facebook, and Microsoft has invested in others, connecting the data centers in North America, South America, Asia, Europe, and Africa, according to Telegeography, a research firm. Here are some interesting facts about these sea cables. Cable installation is a very slow, tedious process. It's quite an expensive work. Well, another fact is sharks are trying to eat the internet. Well, here's a video. Of course, it will be muted for copyright reasons. Well, this is the undersea cable, folks, and this shark is wanting to eat it. These type of shark attacks are a regular occurrence, folks. I don't know, but sharks somehow find these undersea cables tasty. The internet is as vulnerable underwater as it is underground. It seems like every couple of years, some well-meaning construction worker puts his bulldozer in gear and kills Netflix for a whole continent. While the ocean is free of construction equipment that might otherwise combine to form Devastator, there are many ongoing aquatic threats to the submarine cables. Sharks aside, the internet is ever at risk of being disrupted by boat anchors, trawling by fishing vessels, and natural disasters, of course. Well, connecting the world, of course, is not something new. Spies love underwater cables. During the height of the Cold War, the USSR often transmitted weakly encoded messages between two of its major naval bases. Strong encryption was a bother and also overkill, thought Soviet officers, as the bases were directly linked by an undersea cable located in sensor-laden Soviet territorial waters. No way would the Americans risk World War III by trying to somehow access and tap that cable. They didn't count on the USS Halibut, a specially fitted submarine capable of slipping by Soviet defenses. The American submarine found the cable and installed a giant wire trap, returning monthly to gather the transmissions it had recorded. This operation, called Ivy Bells, was later compromised by a former NSA analyst named Ronald Pelton, who sold information on the mission to the Soviets. Today, tapping submarine communication cables is standard operating procedure for spy agencies. Governments are turning to submarine cables to avoid said spies. With respect to the electronic espionage, one big advantage held by the US is the key role its scientists, engineers, and corporations played in inventing and building large parts of the global telecommunications infrastructure. Major lines of data tend to cross into American borders and territorial water, making wiretapping a breeze. When documents stolen from the former NSA analyst Edward Snowden came to light, many countries were outraged to learn to the extent to which American spy agencies were intercepting foreign data. As a result, some countries are reconsidering the infrastructure of the internet itself. Brazil, for example, has launched a project to build a submarine communications cable to Portugal that not only bypasses the US entirely, but also specifically excludes US companies from the involvement. Submarine communication cables are faster and cheaper than satellites. Though fiber optic cables and communication satellites were developed in the 60s, satellites have a twofold problem: latency and a bit loss. Sending and receiving signals to and from space takes time. Meanwhile, researchers have developed optical fibers that can transmit information at 99.7% the speed of light. Forget cyber warfare. To really cripple the internet, all you need is a scuba gear and a pair of wire cutters. The good news is that it's hard to cut through the submarine communication cable, if only because of the thousands of very lethal volts running through each of them. The bad news is that it is possible, as was seen in Egypt in 2013. There, just north of Alexandria, men in wetsuits were apprehended having intentionally cut through the Southeast Asia, Middle East, West Europe 4 cable, which runs 12,500 miles and connects 3 continents. Internet speeds in Egypt were crippled by 60% until the line was repaired. Underwater cables are not easy to repair, but after 150 years, we have learnt a trick or two. When a submarine cable is damaged, special repair ships are dispatched. If the cable is located in shallow waters, robots are deployed to grab the cable and haul it to the surface. If the cable is in deep waters, 6,500 feet or greater, the ships lower specially designed grapnels that grab onto the cable and hoist it up for mending. To make things easier, grapnels sometimes cut the damaged cable into two, and repair ships raise each end separately for patching above the water. The internet's undersea backbone is built to last for 25 years. As of 2014, there are 285 communication cables at the bottom of the ocean, and 22 of them are not yet in use. These are called dark cables. Once they are switched on, they are said to be lit. Submarine cables have an expectancy of 25 years, during which time they are considered economically viable for a capacity standpoint? Well, here's an illustration of how mobile internet actually works. Of course, it will be muted for copyright reasons. Mobile companies have created the illusion of a giant wireless internet network, but in reality, our data is just being transferred through wires. This is a photo of your mom in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. She wants to send it to you and your family. She loads it up on email and sends it to you. But it's not as simple as it sounds. That photo has a lot of work to do. First, it goes to the nearest cell phone tower. Then it goes through Andaman and Nicobar's local network of fiber optic cables. Most of the internet isn't relayed through satellites, but in fact, far off places are connected through a network of underwater cables that go from one country to another. Billions of photos, videos, and websites travel through these cables. These cables are in fact quite vulnerable. Some might scuba dive and cut these cables and hack into them. Sometimes they might get hit by anchors, and there have been problems with marine animals chewing them. Sharks find it tasty. So your mom's photo has to travel in the bottom of the Indian Ocean just to get from the Andamans to mainland India. From there, the photo leads to an internet exchange point, one of the massive hubs where data shoots around. They are in Mumbai, Noida, Chennai, Kolkata, Bengaluru, Hyderabad, and Ahmedabad, and Guwahati. These are like the central stations of the internet directing data where to go. From there, it will travel through the country through fiber optic cables, occasionally hitting routers and switches to send it the right way. It's only right before the photo gets to your laptop or mobile phone that your data goes wireless, be it 4G or Wi-Fi, when it's transmitted from a Wi-Fi router or a cell tower. Now you have no excuse to ignore your mom's photo from a vacation in the Andamans. Let's have a look at satellite internet. Satellite internet is a wireless connection that involves 3 satellite dishes, one at the internet service provider's hub, one in space, and one attached to your property. In addition to the satellite dish, you also need a modem and cables running to and from the dish to your modem. Once you have everything connected, the ISP will send the internet signal to the dish in space, which then relays it to you. Every time that you make a request, a new page download, send an email, etc., it goes to the dish in space and then back to the ISP's hub. The completed request is then sent back through space to your dish and then to your computer. You have networked workstations or multiple computers connected. Then you have a satellite modem and a router and a dish. The dish transmits signal to the satellite, and the satellite transmits signal through teleporting, NOC, and satellite hub. That is how the satellite internet works. The only reason why you might find satellite internet useful is if you live in an area where other internet options such as cable or DSL isn't available. If you are on a dial-up, satellite internet will be an upgrade in a sense that satellite internet is considerably faster. Other than that though, there isn't much of a reason to use satellite internet. Well, some of the cons of satellite internet, folks, is that the weather affects the signal path. During bad wind or rainstorms, you should expect poor quality internet, assuming you have internet at all. Poor latency or high ping rate. Latency and ping rate is essentially the same thing. They both test how long it takes to communicate between another computer, device, service, or server in a network. Minor obstructions can affect your signal. Your dish needs to point south, where all the orbiting dishes are, and anything in the way of your dish's signal, such as branches or buildings, can affect the quality. Then you have bandwidth limitations. Each month you'll have so much bandwidth you can use up before your ISP throttles your connections, slows it down. This is in accordance to acceptable use policy, fair use policy. Some ISPs do daily bandwidths instead, which is slightly better. VPNs aren't compatible with satellite internet. Satellite internet is relatively expensive. You'll pay around $100 a month for a speed up to 2 Mbps. To put that into perspective, this is twice what I pay per month for 25 times faster internet connection. Satellite internet is faster than dial-up. It will depend on what package you buy, but you can expect satellite speeds to be 10 to 35 times faster than dial-up. Satellite internet connections can handle high bandwidth usage, so your internet speed quality shouldn't be affected by lots of users or peak use times. You don't need a phone line for satellite internet. How does internet on the airplane work? It works in 2 different ways: air to ground connectivity as well as satellites. Data is sent and received from the airplane to the ground and back. This only works on land and cannot handle streaming services. Then from satellites, data is sent and received from the airplane to provide global high-speed connectivity. Ground-based mobile broadband towers which send signals up to an aircraft antennas, usually on the base of the fuselage, as you saw in the image. As you travel into different sections of the airspace, the plane automatically connects to signals from the nearest tower, so there is, in theory at least, no interruption to your browsing. But if you're passing over large bodies of water or particularly remote terrain, connectivity can be an issue. The second method uses satellite technology. Planes connect to satellites in geostationary orbit, 35,786 kilometers above the planet, which send and receive signals to Earth via receivers and transmitters. These are the same satellites that are used in television signals, weather forecasting, and covert military operations. Information is transmitted to and from your smartphone via an antenna on top of the aircraft, which connects to the closest satellite signal. Information is passed between the ground and the plane via the satellite. Wi-Fi signal is distributed to the plane passengers via onboard router. Why is in-plane Wi-Fi so slow? Back in 2008, when in-flight broadband company Gogo launched its first onboard Wi-Fi service on a Virgin America plane, the 3 Mbps connection was adequate for few laptops and streaming video was prohibited. But now, with every passenger touting to at least one device to connect to countless apps, websites and services, there's a much greater strain on resources. These days, satellite connection offers up to 12 Mbps. Why is in-flight Wi-Fi so expensive? All of that technology doesn't come cheap, and nor do in-aircraft systems. Antennas also increase drag, adding fuel costs to the airline's bill. Those fees, plus engineering and maintenance costs, are usually passed on to the consumers. The price of in-flight connectivity varies between airlines, although some offer free trials. The first 10 MB on the Emirates flight is free. Well, here are a few airlines that offer in-flight Wi-Fi. Emirates, Qatar, JetBlue, Norwegian, Turkish, Air China, China Eastern, and Nokair. First, let's talk about Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is a technology that transmits data from your router to your devices such as your laptop, mobile phone, TV, and tablet. Wi-Fi without internet service at your home won't do anything. Well, finally, let's discuss all about broadband. What exactly is broadband? Broadband is the name given to any fast, permanent internet connection. It can be delivered by a cable, satellite, mobile, fiber optics, and ADSL, which is the most popular way. When the internet revolution began, users accessed the net via dial-up and a modem, a piece of hardware that converts signals from your computer so they can travel down a telephone line, and vice versa. In my area, there are two types of broadband connections prevalent. One is the DSL and the other one is the fixed wireless internet. Well, let's discuss them one by one. How exactly does fixed wireless internet work? Well, essentially both of these share the same concept. You have a modem which is connected to the receiver antenna which is mounted on top of your house. The antenna then sends and receives a high-speed internet signal from the main access point, that is a transmitter or a transmitter tower which is nearby. The router then gives you wireless as well as wired connection through LAN cable. What are the pros and cons of fixed wireless internet? The internet is sent through airwaves and doesn't require phone or cable lines. Service is reliable and fast. Speeds are comparable to high-speed cable. There are no data limits. No phone service is required with your service. You can cut the cord. Fixed wireless internet suppliers are typically locally owned and operated businesses. In my area, Timber is prevalent, although the service is terrible. Well, there are some cons as well. You must have a line of sight connection with an access point, and in most cases you need to be within 10 miles of the access point. This can limit availability. Fixed wireless internet may be more expensive than DSL. Then what exactly is DSL? DSL essentially works on the same concept. You have a modem router which is connected to the receiver which receives the phone and internet signal. Well, nowadays the internet and phone signal doesn't transmit through the telephone poles, but rather everything has gone underground now. Well, the pros and cons of DSL are: the cost of DSL is sometimes cheaper. Newer versions of DSL are getting faster but still fall behind cable and wireless internet. There are no new wires needed for service. DSL runs over standard phone lines. It's always on. No need to dial in or wait for services to start up. But there are some cons as well. Typically services provided by the phone company, which means you'll also likely be required to carry a phone service. Speeds are dependent on the proximity to the DSL main distribution point. The closer you are, the fastest your service will be. Your speed will slow down the farther you get from the main distribution point, some DSL provider implement data caps. Well, I hope this information was useful to you. If you liked what you saw, give this video a thumbs up. Share this video with your friends and family. Comment if you'd like me to make videos on a particular topic. This is your host, Tejasvi Kapoor, signing off.